Hey guys, I have been so looking forward to reading about Sanford Meisner from our textbooks for this entire class session. I have heard of Meisner but I have not studied his technique in my training. And because I've heard of him, of course, and have known have known several actors who have experience with learning his process. I have always wanted to attend a Meisner class or workshop, which led me to the first thing that really stood out to me immediately. Not only did it stand out, I laughed out loud when I read the part that where he said, "Oh man, if I had $1 for every time a prospective student said they'd studied a little Meisner." I thought it was so funny because I've directed some plays, in the community over the years, and in the audition process, I heard lots of things like that. I've studied a little of this and a little of that, and anyway, um, I also liked the part where he talked about um, where he said that Meisner was the only one who taught Meisner, and that they were influenced by him and based their teachings on presumptions of his teaching. That really struck me. It seemed quite the deference to Meisner that Mr. Pope said that their Meisner work was actually their interpretation of the work. I thought that was very respectful, in my opinion, which I liked. Another takeaway for me, of course, was the discussion of the other, the partner exercises. In my work with students at the high school level and in class and in rehearsal as well, I have always, though I haven't trained in Meisner specifically, I have always emphasized the importance of focus on the other. Even in monologue work, if it doesn't come from a play and there isn't a written character that the person's that's in the room that the character is talking to. I have the students create the situation, the givens, if you will, that would create a way for them to be talking to someone else. If that way, if actors focused on reaching their objective from the other, if their objectives aren't just like, I want to convey, which is another thing he talked about in the chapter, I want to I want to vent my feelings. But if the objective becomes about the other and about eliciting a response, or getting the other, your partner, to do something, um, then it becomes more interesting and active. I love that he said that this results in acting as being defined as behaving truthfully in imaginary circumstances. I love that. It also spoke to me a lot when he said, because the individual is communicating with another person, he is, without being self conscious, clarifying his feelings before an audience. There were so many things. When we wrote the essays, I thought, my goodness, I could just retype everything in the chapter stood out to me. Another takeaway was the section where he discussed working with the two actors playing Biff and Hap. He spent a lot of time talking about Death of a Salesman. And just, one section of dialogue in that two-person scene gave rise to so many different exercises that he was able to do with those actors, and talking to them about their characters. This part of the chapter was about playing the problem, which of course is a problem, and that we should not play the problem. I love how he said, actors working on scenes typically think about their characters' given circumstances and how they feel about them, which is playing the problem and not the Meisner approach. The lesson is to consider the other character's problem and try to bring about a change in that character. And the actor uses the lines given by the playwright to change or inspire some action from the partner. So it ceases to play the problem and becomes portraying what the problem is to the audience through his actions and not his emotions regarding his own problem. A quote that stood out to me in the chapter is, the primary goal of our training is to teach actors to see the text as a series of opportunities to change the behavior of another person instead of a vehicle for producing emotion on stage. And in some of our studies of previous acting teachers, there was great emphasis on emotion. Another thing that Mr. Pope said in this chapter that, I started with a laugh out loud, and then this comment made me speak out loud and say, whoa, because it really was, it was kind of striking to me. When he said, people are largely unaware of how the world views them. Thus, for actors to give their characters this kind of insight is contrary to reality and common sense. That really hit me. I really thought about that. I think about my students and how they walk around every day, and even adults. They don't know. They assume how people are viewing them, and but they don't, or they don't think about it. They don't worry about what other people, and they just go about their day doing things they want to do and don't think about that. So as actors, when we start applying character traits, because we don't sit around as people going, I am introspective and I spend, my part of my personality is, not paying attention to, we don't do that. So when we do that for our characters, doesn't make sense. And it becomes a trap. Because then when we start applying personality traits to the character, instead of playing objectives to get a response from the other, then we're just focusing solely on self, which doesn't ring as true. And it becomes a more emotional performance instead of action. I like this whole idea of action too. And I didn't ever study Meisner, and I have discovered, little did I know, that some bits and pieces of it I do already believe and focus on when I'm teaching my kids. I have to say, so far I've enjoyed the writing in the Brestoff book more than this one, but that's not to say I haven't learned a lot from this book, but this chapter was awesome for me. And I think the last takeaway was that even though I hadn't studied him, I was super excited, but I had a little trepidation. But just the realization that the ideology of Meisner is not out of reach for me, even though I'm learning about it later in life. And in fact, I already hold dear several of the basics of at least Mr. Pope's interpretation of the Meisner work. And then we got to the second chapter on Meisner, really about the school, the neighborhood playhouse that started before Meisner ended up a faculty member there. But one thing that stood out to me immediately is we've read several chapters about different schools, and almost every single time they do a bunch of name dropping, which is always impressive and everything. But this time, the names really caught my attention. There seemed to be more recent actors, but even though some of them are older, but we're talking about some of my favorites here. The list was very good. Awesome, and I knew the names, most of all of them actually, but Gregory Peck, Diane Keaton, and my absolute favorite, so especially when I saw the name Robert Duvall, it really got my attention and stood out to me, and I thought, wow, the name dropping worked for me in this chapter for sure. These people are graduates of the Neighborhood Playhouse School of Theater, where Sanford Meisner was a teacher. I leaned in, and immediately became interested in the school and what it is they teach, which is good because that is basically what the chapter is about. Kind of going through each year and the things that they study there, and starting with, which was amusing to read again, the main thrust, because though I haven't studied him, of course I've heard of him. And the things that I hear, description of exercises, and I was always fascinated by the repetition partner work. So to read that in the first year they start with that, and they do it a lot and for a long period of time, and then when they after they've moved on to scene work and stuff, if they're stuck, they go back. They always go back to basics. And apparently a basics in the Meisner approach is that repetition exercise. Because I think it focuses on listening, really, truly listening, and focusing on the other, really, and observing, but also using the ears as well as the eyes to develop good listening skills and listening on stage. I call it active listening with my students. I'm always like, I believe that you, the character or the actor, are listening. I believe that you're hearing what's being said. The audience won't believe your character is listening, though. Because I know you and I'm assuming you are listening, but I don't believe who you want me to believe you're portraying up there is listening, because you're not really responding. And, and I teach high school kids. And so these concepts of figuring out what an objective is, but then how to pursue it, and then trying to not make it about themselves, but about the other it takes time. And so I think the repetition exercise is really deceptively simple, as it said. Another takeaway I took from that short chapter there at the end, toward the end of the book, was the singing and dancing classes. I mean, I don't know why I'm surprised. I took those, but my degree was musical theater acting. So of course I took singing classes, musical theater and musicianship classes, and of course I took all kinds of different dance. But I guess I was thinking, this is a school where we study Sanford Meisner, this straight acting idea, so that I was surprised when there was emphasis placed on that kind of movement, but I shouldn't be surprised based on the full philosophy. But anyway, that was a standout. I think the last takeaway I took from that chapter was that the neighborhood playhouse school of acting is yet another amazing school that I knew nothing about. And as a teacher of high school students, it challenged me, and a lot of moments in this class so far have challenged me to be more informed of all the many different types of schools my students can be involved in, and the different types of opportunities that await them, and the ones who seek to be employed in this profession. So all of that to say, I there were a lot of takeaways, and I am so excited we finally got to Meisner, and I look forward to thinking about a lesson plan for my high school students and how I can make lessons and exercises that actually help them in their process. But anyway, thanks for tuning in to my rambling this week, and I look forward to hearing from all of you. I hope you have a great week.